friends, my name is Kayla Rain, and today I'm doing my monthly wrap up for the month of April. And in April, I ended up reading 5 novels, 1 graphic novel, and 7 comic book volumes. So starting off with the graphic novel, I read Soppy by Philippa Rice. I borrowed this from my friend Trish, so thank you so much, Trish, for letting me borrow this. This is such a cute graphic novel. It only took me, I think, 15 minutes to read it from start to finish, and it is just this really sweet story of a couple when they start dating and then just kind of following them through their relationship. And there were just so many really adorable illustrations throughout that just showed what being in a relationship is like, and just kind of the romantic side of it, and just the sweet little moments that aren't always captured. And it was just incredibly sweet, and I loved it. And I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars because it did exactly what it was supposed to do, and that was just like make me feel warm and gooey and swoony inside. So it was perfection in my personal opinion. The next book that I picked up was Scarlet by Marissa Meyer, and I borrowed this from the library, so I'll go ahead and just insert a graphic here. And I enjoyed this. This is the second installment in the Lunar Chronicles, and it follows the main character Scarlet and kind of her journey, but we do get to see some old characters pop up, and I really enjoyed seeing the old characters pop up, but I didn't so much enjoy Scarlet's story. I didn't like Scarlet very much as a character, and I also didn't like Wolf as a character at all. And there were also some problematic themes that went along with her storyline, which I did talk about in a little more depth in my Goodreads review, so I will link that down below. But overall, it was a pretty good second installment to the series. I'm definitely going to be continuing on with it because I am enjoying it overall, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. And then I picked up Symptoms of Being Human by Jeff Garvin, and this is a debut novel, and it just like knocked my socks off because I absolutely adored it. This follows a main character named Riley, and Riley identifies as genderqueer. However, Riley is not out to anyone else but Riley's therapist. This book very much follows how Riley is dealing with all that and just trying to find an identity and where someone who identifies as a genderqueer person fits in the world. And this book was just very well done. It was very well researched to start with. The author, Jeff Garvin, definitely did his research and checked into agencies and organizations that you could go to get help, websites that are very helpful for someone who is in the process of figuring out whether they identify as genderqueer or maybe transgender or anywhere on the LGBT plus spectrum, really. This research was just really well done, and this book talked about some really heavy issues. So I do want to go ahead and put out a trigger warning for rape and suicide because there's both things that are discussed in this book, but that's something that's important to discuss with topics like this because that is a high-risk population for sexual violence and physical violence and suicide, because there are so many awful things that you have to deal with when you live in a culture and society that isn't accepting and loving and isn't open to someone being who they are. This book I felt was really well done. I liked that there was an inclusion of therapy, and there was a discussion of medication and actually going to therapy appointments. Like I said, everything I felt in this book was just really well done, and then the story itself was just really, really lovely and well put together. So I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars because it was freaking fantastic. And I'm so glad that Michelle over at Michelle's Life recommended this, because this is the reason that I went and picked it up like right away, because I was like, oh, she said it was really good, like I need to read it now. And she was right. It is really good, and you need to read it now. Next is yet another debut book, and this one I buddy read with Caitlin over at Book Chats, and I will link her info somewhere on the screen and probably in the down bar below as well. And I know she did not like this at all, but I did enjoy it. This book follows 3 main characters, and they live in a small town in Tennessee, and it just follows them kind of figuring out what they want to do with the rest of their lives. They're in their senior year, they're trying to make transitions into adulthood and figure out where they're going after this, and all 3 of them are struggling with some thoughts of being stuck in this small town and how they're going to deal with that. One character decides she's going to deal with that by getting out, and then another character thinks that he's stuck there, and another character just decides to make the best of the situation, and it just really chronicles their desires around that whole topic and just transitioning into adulthood. And I think that is a really interesting coming of age novel. There were a few issues that I had with it. Coming from a small town, I felt like there were a lot of stereotypical things in there, but overall I felt like this was a really solid debut novel, and I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. Next, I read The Elite and the One by Kira Cass, and I am very sad to say that I did not enjoy these. I'm gonna talk about them together, but I'm not gonna give any spoilers, so you don't have to worry about that. But I felt like it was just the same story over again with just very, very little new information added. So that was one of the reasons that I really didn't enjoy it. And I felt like there were some problematic themes in there, and 2 in particular involved abuse and just violence and just attacking other people. There was one instance where one of the female characters ended up attacking another girl that was in the selection and actually put glass in her shoe and was like trying to hurt her, physically hurt her, on top of emotionally tearing her down. And then the book just kind of waved it away that it was okay because this particular character was like, oh, but I was actually just afraid of what would happen after my beauty faded, so I was lashing out in violent ways. The main character, not the book obviously, the main character was just like, oh, I understand, like that sucks. That's fine. It's okay to be violent towards other people if you're upset. And then there was another storyline where a character in the book is abused by a parent, like abused really badly by a parent. And it's just kind of brushed off as not really a big deal because it's noble, as if being subject to child abuse is noble if you're doing it to spare someone else abuse and being hurt. And there was like no other further discussion on that or exploration of that. And I don't know if I'm just incredibly sensitive towards topics like that because of the field that I'm in, because I do social work, and I don't know, that just really rubbed me the wrong way, and I felt very uncomfortable with it. So my overall enjoyment of these last 2 installments in the main trilogy were just very negative, and I didn't really have a good time reading them. So I ended up rating The Elite 2 out of 5 stars, and I rated the One a 1 out of 5 stars. And I definitely see the appeal in this trilogy, and I get why people like it, but it just wasn't for me personally. There were just some things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and overall I felt like there would have been more strength to this series if it had all been one book, because it was just the same story over and over again. I don't want to say too much bad about the series because I know people like it, and I don't want anyone to like feel bad because I didn't like it. Like, if you like it, that's awesome. It just wasn't for me. Next, I picked up Amulet Volume 1 by Kabu Kibaishi. I buddy read this with Michelle over at Michelle's Life, and I have volumes 2 and 3, and I will eventually get to them, but I'm not in any rush. This just follows a main character who kind of falls into all of the Disney tropes. You know, the lost parents, the big sister who has to take care of the younger sibling and like be a super adult. And it was like a cute story, but it was very trope-tastic. And I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. I probably will continue on with the series just because I do want to know what happens, and it is like a pretty cool world that's set up in there, but it's very typical of a child's graphic novel or child story, so just be forewarned on that one. The artwork is really beautiful though, so there's that, and the world in there is really nice. It's a little creepy sometimes though, but storyline, a little bit trope-tastic. And then finally, and I'm just gonna talk about all these collectively because they all got the same rating because they are amazing, I picked up Sweet Tooth Volume 1, Sweet Tooth Volume 2, Sweet Tooth Volume 3, Sweet Tooth Volume 4, Sweet Tooth Volume 5, and finally Sweet Tooth Volume 6, all by Jeff Lemire. So this is the completed series, and I absolutely adored this. This entire comic book series follows a main character who's nicknamed Sweet Tooth. His name is Gus, but he is given the nickname Sweet Tooth because he just really loves sweets. And he is a 9-year-old child who was born after this awful plague comes and sweeps the world, and all the children that are born after the plague hits are hybrid children, so they are half human, half animal, and Sweet Tooth happens to be half human, half deer. And it just follows him on his journey of trying to find safety in this world where it is very dangerous for hybrid children, because obviously the full humans, the adults, want to find out why they aren't getting sick, and they are trying to capture them and experiment on them, and there just really isn't a lot of safety for them. And there's this huge, really complex theme of innocence versus corruption in this entire series that is just so well done and well balanced, just seeing that back and forth between Sweet Tooth and everything else that is happening. This is a very difficult series to read because there are some really hard-hitting moments, but the artwork is stunning. It was very touching, and I have not seen artwork in a comic book series that touched me as much as this did and really made me like feel all of the feels. I gave every single one of these volumes a 5 out of 5 stars because it was so incredible. I absolutely loved it, and I would just highly recommend anyone who likes a post-apocalyptic survival-esque story to pick these up because they were so fantastic. Like, probably one of the best comic book series I think I've ever read. But that is it for my wrap up. Those are all the books that I read in the month of April. It was a really great reading month. There were some books that I didn't love quite so much, but I'm glad that I finished them because there's like this sense of accomplishment with finishing a trilogy or a series. So, I mean, it wasn't a waste of time. I'm still glad I did it. And who knows, maybe I'll revisit them and I'll like them again. Maybe I just read them too close together. And if I had read them farther apart, I am talking about the Selection series, by the way. Maybe if I had just read them further apart, there would have been a little bit of a difference and I would have enjoyed the storyline more because it wouldn't have felt like the same thing. So maybe I'll revisit that again. Who knows? But these are the books that I read. I really enjoyed most of them and I would highly recommend them. I will leave links to any of the books that I did happen to do a review on in the down bar below if you want to see my thoughts on it a little bit more. But beware, there might be some spoilers in some of these reviews, but I will definitely let that be known in the front portion of the review when you start reading, so you're not gonna like be halfway through it and then be spoiled and be like, what the heck, Kayla Rain, why didn't you warn me? As always, thank you so much for joining in and watching me, and stay weird.